let's be real. Going 19 hours without food can sound like torture if you're used to eating every few hours. Why would you do that to yourself? Well, here's the deal. Fasting for 19 hours activates something amazing inside your body called autophagy. It's where it gets rid of unhealthy or damaged cells, like precancerous cells, before they can turn into cancer. You and I both have precancerous cells in our body right now. But if they don't turn into cancer, there's nothing to worry about. But that's not all fasting does. It also lowers inflammation, insulin resistance, and a lot more. So today, I'm going to walk you through a timeline of what actually happens when you stop eating, why a 19-hour fast is such a sweet spot, and how to do it, even if you've never tried intermittent fasting before. Honestly, fasting can be hard, especially since most of us are just used to eating whenever we want. We snack at work, maybe in the car, and finish dinner with a little something sweet, 'cause why not? Most people eat for 16 hours a day, so they only have a 7 to 8 hour break while they're sleeping. Here's the problem with that. Without a longer break from eating, your body doesn't really have the chance to do autophagy to its full potential and get rid of those precancerous cells as easily. Constantly eating also keeps your insulin levels high all day long, and high insulin tells your body to store fat, not burn it, and you can become insulin resistant. This is a major driver of several different types of cancer. 1 in 3 adults in the US are insulin resistant, and most don't even know it. But if you're someone who often feels tired, craves sugar, struggles to lose weight, or wakes up feeling groggy, you may be insulin resistant. Even if your blood sugar levels test normal, you can still be insulin resistant. However, the good news is insulin resistance is totally reversible, and intermittent fasting is one of the best ways to do it. Now, if you're a cancer survivor, I don't want you to think that you have to fast to beat cancer. I just like to teach people about natural things they can do to stay healthy and keep cancer away. With that being said, let's go through a timeline of what happens when you don't eat for 19 hours straight, starting with right after you finish a meal. Whenever you eat, your blood sugar goes up and insulin is released. So your body uses the sugar, or glucose, from that food for energy. Now, around 4 to 6 hours after you finish eating, you've almost finished digesting, but not completely. You might even start to feel hungry again, but your body is still busy processing everything you ate a while ago. You're still in what's called a fed state. That means the carbs are still being broken down into glucose. Your insulin levels are still up, and your body's either using the energy from that meal or storing it. If you're busy and moving around during that time, that energy is being put to good use. But if you're lounging on the couch, your body's just going to store any leftover energy for later. So even 4 to 6 hours after you finish eating, you're still not burning stored energy. And that's the key here. Even though you may feel like eating again after 4 hours, your insulin is still high from your last meal, which means any sort of fat burning is switched off. It's like your body saying, we have groceries in the fridge. Why would we dig into the freezer? Especially if your last meal was a big one. So as you can imagine, if you're constantly snacking throughout the day or sipping on calorie-filled drinks, your blood sugar stays high. It never gets a chance to go down at all between meals. That's not good, so the shift doesn't even begin until 8 to 12 hours after you finish eating. At this point, your blood sugar and insulin start to drop, and that's huge. Because remember, when insulin is up, you'll only be able to store energy. But when it comes down, your body finally gets permission to start burning your stored energy for fuel. After 8 hours is when you officially move from using what I just ate to tapping into what I already have. And that stored backup energy is called glycogen. It's basically stored sugar, and it's kept mostly in your muscles and your liver. So your liver starts breaking down glycogen, and it releases sugar into your bloodstream so you can have energy. But at the 8 to 12 hour mark, you're still really only at the beginning of this metabolic switch. I know this sounds like a long time, but it's really not until 12 to 14 hours after you finish eating a meal that things really start to happen. That's when your glycogen, or stored energy, is also starting to run low. And when your body senses that, it finally starts turning to your stored fat for energy. So it starts breaking down your stored fat into something called ketones. Now, listen to this. Studies are showing that most types of cancer cells can't get the same kind of energy from ketones that they do from, say, glucose. Your normal cells can use them just fine, but most cancer cells get very little energy from fat or ketones. You may be familiar with Dr. Thomas Seyfried. He claims that the reason for this is that cancer cells have damaged mitochondria, so they rely heavily on sugar or glutamine for energy over anything else. And this is why he heavily encourages the keto diet, which is very low carb and very high fat. Essentially, it forces your body into a state of ketosis, where it relies heavily on ketones for energy and therefore lowers your cancer risk. I go over this more in detail in another video which you can watch next. So, where were we? After 12 to 14 hours of fasting, you're finally burning through years of stored fat. And after 14 to 16 hours, then you're finally in the full-on fat burning zone. But more importantly, your body is finally saying, okay, it's time to clean up house and really start ramping up autophagy. By now, your metabolism has fully pivoted. Your body's breaking down fat into fatty acids and ketones for energy, and it's doing it without you having to eat anything. That's the beauty of intermittent fasting. You're running on what you already have, without having to cook. This is also when people start to notice some sort of magical mental clarity. Your brain loves ketones, so you may start to feel sharper, more alert, maybe more energized, despite not having eaten anything for half a day. At the same time, your insulin levels are still at rock bottom. And that's great news if you've been struggling with insulin resistance or high blood sugar. This may be the kind of reset your body has been needing. No sugar spikes, no energy crashes. Just steady fuel. So I mean, whether you do intermittent fasting to lose weight, lower inflammation, or reduce your cancer risk, around the 14 to 16 hour mark is when you're only really starting to reap these kinds of benefits. Now, whether you fast or not, your body's always doing some level of autophagy behind the scenes, but it slows down dramatically when we're digesting food. So that's why fasting is the best way to enhance autophagy. And autophagy really starts to ramp up at the 17 to 19 hour mark. Basically, your body is going into full-on repair mode. This is cancer prevention at its finest. So if you're a cancer survivor or you're trying to prevent it, the 17 to 19 hour mark is what you want to reach. However, if you can't go that long without food, that's okay. Fasting does get easier with time. But even if you can only manage a 14-hour fast, it's still better than nothing. Okay, so how do we know that the 19-hour fast is so effective? Well, there have been a few studies done that followed Muslims while they fasted during the month of Ramadan, and they took blood samples every few hours to see what was happening at a cellular level. And lo and behold, they found that the gene expression increased dramatically after the 17 to 19-hour fasting mark. This is when the body really begins repairing itself at a much higher rate. And aside from cancer prevention, that also means your brain cells are being repaired, your muscles are becoming more sensitive to insulin, and your inflammation markers really drop. So a 19-hour fast can also be amazing for preventing things like dementia, diabetes, obesity, PCOS, and again cancer. Something else these studies have reported is how people claim they feel after hitting the 19-hour fasting mark regularly. They have way more energy, less brain fog, less cravings for sweets, and they lose fat without losing muscle. Now, this is interesting. Fasting actually increases a growth hormone that helps you to preserve your lean muscle mass while burning fat. Amazing. So at this point you may be thinking, okay, all of this sounds great, but I still don't think I can fast for 19 hours straight. And you're right, it's not easy, and it's not for everyone, especially if you're used to eating or snacking late at night. That means you can't eat until 4 p.m. or later the next day. At that point, you might be hangry, lightheaded, and can't stop thinking about food, but I mean, that's only temporary. It takes at least 2 to 3 weeks for most people to get used to intermittent fasting. But once they do, and they start feeling the benefits, they're hooked. So my advice would be to start slow with a 12 to 14-hour fasting window, and gradually work your way up from there. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you certainly don't have to fast every day. Just aim to give your body longer breaks between digesting food, so it can focus more on repairing itself. And obviously, fasting isn't for everyone, especially if you have certain medical conditions or you're on medication. Always ask your doctor first if it's safe for you to try. And if you can't fast, or it seems daunting, just going longer between meals and snacking less gives your blood sugar and insulin levels time to die down a bit before you eat again. And this helps too. But I mean, that's only temporary. It takes at least 2 to 3 weeks for most people to get used to intermittent fasting. But once they do, and they start feeling the benefits, they're hooked. So my advice would be to start slow with a 12 to 14 fasting window, and gradually work your way up from there. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you certainly don't have to fast every day. Just aim to give your body longer breaks between digesting food so it can focus more on repairing itself. And, obviously, fasting isn't for everyone, especially if you have certain medical conditions or you're on medication. Always ask your doctor first if it's safe for you to try. And if you can't fast or it seems daunting, just going longer between meals and snacking less gives your blood sugar and insulin levels time to die down a bit before you eat again. And this helps too. But autophagy is like a built-in secret weapon. We have to prevent illness. So let your body do what it was designed to.